Wrocław, over a 1,000-year-old city in the southwestern part of Poland, has been set up at the confluence of 4 tributaries of the Oder River. Dukes, bishops and wealthy burghers have all multiplied the city's heritage throughout the centuries. The lofted town hall has become an obvious, visible sign of Wrocław's pride and wealth. Throughout the ages, this city has been inhabited by the Germans, Czechs, Poles and Austrians. At the end of the Second World War, as a result of the battles between the Red Army and the Wehrmacht, 70% of the town has been devastated and some districts have been completely destroyed. The restoration of the heritage has become the main aim, as well as a way to a better life for the citizens of Wrocław. The old drawings, photographs and descriptions from the past served as the most important clues and indicators for historians, monument restorers and builders. Today, the comparison of the photographs from the decline of the Second World War and the contemporary state of monuments proves the immensity of hard work. The restoration, however, has been a long and slow process which is yet fully to be completed. Therefore, it was not a coincidence that Wrocław was chosen to host the debate of the 4th European Heritage Forum. To invest in the past, you have to become acquainted with it, like it, accept it, respect it. Wrocław's heritage is widely varied. It belongs to many nations. Its history is complicated and contains myths. The first myth is that Wrocław is a thoroughly German town. The second is that it is a Piast dynasty's town returning to its homeland. To deal with such myths and at the same time to respect the European heritage poses the biggest challenge for every host of every venue. The stronger the roots, the taller a tree can grow. Heritage symbolizes those roots far more significantly than infrastructure. Of course, balanced progress and the quality of life require a high standard of infrastructure as well. However, you cannot just remove man from his material as well as spiritual heritage.
Dziedzictwa materialnego i duchowego.
Their debate took place in the Congress Center by the Centennial Hall, one of the most significant architectural works of the 20th century, included in the UNESCO's World Heritage List. This year's forum was organized by the European Council, the European Commission and the National Heritage Board of Poland. Its theme is Value the European Heritage and the Economic Development. The conjoined Polish and German history of Wrocław inspired this German researcher.
So I read all this really terrible story about getting Germans out, getting Polish people in, getting them from all kinds of countries and all kinds of parts of the country, I would say. Urban people from Lviv, rural people from central Poland, and all these new people in this city had to adjust to a city that was not theirs. So the option to rebuild the German town or to transform it by ideology into a Polish, just by declaration, or to insert some new elements in that best way of Polish modernism. And this is something I discovered and liked very much.
The vicinity of the monumental work of Max Berg had a symbolic meaning for the participants of the forum. It was an evidence that the building included in the UNESCO's World Heritage List can also be a significant part of a modern European city. The inside of the tremendous ferro-concrete dome hosts a lot of concerts, spectacles and sports events. The delegates of the Wrocław's Forum marveled at the unique construction of the hall.
As the Vice President of the European Parliament and a member of the Cultural Committee, I am conscious of our common heritage, and I am so much delighted that you have here about 50 coordinators from so much countries from all over Europe.
The forum's theme was particularly important in the face of the current economic situation in Europe and the whole world. The theme was a search for answers to the questions of why we should protect the heritage in spite of the necessary budget cuts in the European countries. During the period when the governments make further savings, those who protect the heritage need to prove that the cuts in this particular sector would result in negative consequences for both the European identity and economy.
This morning's statement will provide pointers for identifying both the various components of heritage potential and possible impacts of its use. This reflection to be continued should certainly be a part of the follow-up of activities of the European conventions, in particular the Faro Convention. That might be a task also for the new steering committee of the Council of Europe for Culture, Heritage and Landscape. And this work should be approached, of course, under the angle of the document Europe 2020 of the European Commission, Strategic for Smart, Sustainable, Intelligent and Inclusive Development.
Cultural heritage can, of course, be looked at from different angles. However, in times of financial crisis as the ones we are living in, its economic dimension is more relevant than ever. Both direct and indirect investments by past generations are still delivering a significant return, several centuries after they were made. Many of them are still generating jobs, greatly contributing to our GDP and spurring our never-ending quest for knowledge and innovation.
I think the impact of the forum is to try to involve as many players as possible. We have the opportunity here to speak to people who are not heritage professionals. They have jobs in the real world, not in the academic world. So they are thinking about heritage, but they're also living an ordinary life. They speak to their neighbours, they speak to the people they work with. That is the way the heritage enthusiasm will be communicated. When an expert like me speaks about heritage, only other experts listen, not ordinary people.
I think heritage is a necessity. And it's a matter of finding the strategies to get through a time of economic difficulty, because heritage provides people with a sense of belonging, a sense of value, and it also economically can be very valuable too.
In the World Bank, we believe that basically we need to invest in people, we need to empower people. And so investing in culture and historic heritage is actually investing in people. And we believe this is the most important part for any nation.
The participants of the forum were the experts in heritage, economists, as well as the representative of authorities and non-governmental organizations from several dozen European countries and the USA. During the forum, different approaches of perceiving the heritage were presented. Also, various methods of practical standards in this field were discussed. The Latvians presented an interesting project of reconstruction and exploitation of the old wooden habitable buildings in the center of Riga.
People understand that actually wooden house can be normally used for living, for business, and it's actually trendy. And so nowadays this goes better for cultural preservation.
Teaching history at schools has a fundamental significance in understanding the past, treating it with a proper respect, as well as knowingly benefit from it. The society that disregards itself, that does not understand itself, cannot function properly. Therefore, in order to understand yourself, you have to know and understand your own, as well as your neighbor's past and history. For every history has its context. The forum was accompanied by a study tour, during which their participants had an opportunity to admire another monument of the southwestern Poland that is included in the UNESCO's World Heritage List. That was the Church of Peace in Jawor. After the 30 years' war in Silesia, the Protestants were deprived of all their churches and were allowed to build just 3 and to use only impermanent materials like wood, straw, sand and clay. This church is one of the 2 remaining that survived until today. There are no more such temples in Europe.
These are the physical manifestation of memory. And for things to have value, you have to have memory. And so it doesn't matter if we have a country that's 200 years old or you have Poland that's 1,000 years old. You have to have some way to communicate that memory over generations, and heritage conservation is the key element in doing that. And that doesn't change from Europe or the US.
The second Church of Peace from the UNESCO's list that the forum participants had an opportunity to see has been erected in Świdnica. According to the imperial regulations, it was allowed to be built outside the city walls without the use of rocks and bricks and without the tower or bells. The process of erecting the building could not last longer than a year.
If you put money into this church, the government puts money. Does the money come back to the government? No. So the government doesn't see the money, but where the church is making money, the people are coming, the bus company is making money, the restaurants are making money, the hotels are making money, and that means some money comes back to the government as income tax. And if you do these calculations, it doesn't cost very much. It's basically an investment.
The space near the Centennial Hall has been utilized in an extraordinary way. The garden, a rarity in Europe, presents a living part of Japanese culture. It has been rebuilt with reference to the historic guidelines from the early 19th century, enriched with Japanese details. After the flood that destroyed the garden, Polish and Japanese specialists rebuilt it one more time. The third stage of the study tour was the Książ Castle, a magnificent Baroque complex from the early 13th century. The castle's terraces with a spectacular view at the valley of the Połcznica River have obtained its contemporary form in the first half of the 20th century.
The values of the site should be respected and preserved, but also shared by the tourists and by the inhabitants. And the link and balance between the tourists and the inhabitants should be established as well, because if there is no link between them, that it won't ever work, because there can be some frictions between the inhabitants not willing to accept all these people coming to visit, and then these visitors coming and not having a feeling of what it is like living in such a heritage site.
The heritage is connected with a wide range of economic, political, social and environmental activities. It influences every aspect of our life. The heritage secures our identity and a feeling of attachment to a certain place. It also integrates the society by presenting common origin, which leads to strengthening the feeling of belonging to a community. Furthermore, by creating better conditions for cooperation and acting for a commonwealth, and by securing educational opportunities, the heritage contributes to building social capital.
Our main goal was, of course, to organize a good and substantial conference.
Another intention of equal importance was to give Polish people an opportunity to participate in such a big international event that does not occur every day. What is more, we wanted to present our foreign participants from all over Europe with a part of Polish history, because this knowledge about Poland and generally about this region is not sufficient enough. We decided to broaden their knowledge by adding to the conference some cultural events. This may not have taught the whole history of Poland, but at least it has certainly motivated everyone to reflect on this subject. The European Heritage Forum was joined with a meeting of coordinators of National European Days of Heritage from 50 countries. The European Commission organized workshops for them about the promotion of social projects. The coordinators visited the exhibition at the Panorama Racławicka. It is one of very few places in the world where you can witness a relic of the 19th century mass culture. The huge painting, thanks to the fusion of particular painting techniques and operations, transfers the viewers into a different reality and times.
Well, I think the main message was that it's a shared enterprise. The heritage can't be something that just the government does or just civic society does or just the experts do. That if we want the heritage to be important and a really significant part of our society, that everybody has a role to play, and we have to play that role as partners rather than as opponents to each other.
The participants of the forum have approved a closing declaration, recognising the value of heritage to society in this beautiful, historic and multicultural city and throughout Europe, noting a continued need in all sectors for a greater understanding of the potential which heritage can offer for quality of life and the needs for its integration in planning for an economically sustainable future, and fully conscious of the current pressures upon resources, both public and private. They recommend, in the context of European Heritage Days activities, that all actors should seek to balance the potential social, cultural and economic benefits when using a heritage as a resource. Strategies should be developed for evaluating and demonstrating benefits to local communities of conservation and access to the heritage. A community-focused approach has the potential to mobilize resources for sustainable heritage development, conservation and access. The EHD programme should focus resources on increasing the European dimension, encouraging exchange, collaboration and cross-border event development with the object of promoting a vision of a common European heritage. And finally, recommend that future European Heritage Days be taken forward in the positive spirit and on the basis of our discussions here in Wrocław in a truly collaborative manner, emphasizing diversity as a source of strength and not of division, and highlighting our shared European heritage as well as our rich local, regional and national heritages.